My first project was a 1932 Maybach DS8. It's an 8-liter V12 cabriolet, and it's this massive vehicle, and it's just the most
Right.
gorgeous thing in the world. And I'm like, well, this is a pretty good way to start things off.
Today on That Car Show, we've got our friend Nate Lander, who runs the shop at the Mercedes-Benz Classic Center in Long Beach, California. When we talk about people who are living just the life that they were meant to live, Nate is one of them. Nate, along with his boss, our pal Mike Kunz, have built a truly special place with the Classic Center and a truly essential resource for us Mercedes-Benz fans in the United States. Some of you listening may know Nate from the Colorado Grand. He's done something like 22 of them. Or maybe you know Nate from the recent and excellent 4-part series he did with Tyler Hoover on Hoovie's Garage, where he and his dachshund Otto stole the show. We'll be doing more with the Mercedes-Benz Classic Center in the future, so stay tuned. In the meantime, it's Nate Lander, and it's a good one. It's That Car Show.
Welcome back to That Car Show. I'm Lindsay, and I'm here with my co-host Ryan and our sometime co-host and always friend Michael Lasasso. And tonight we have a very special guest. Nate Lander, the workshop manager of the Mercedes-Benz Classic Center, is with us. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
Good evening.
So Nate and Ryan and Michael have gotten to know each other through the Colorado Grand because the Mercedes-Benz Classic Center is very involved in that event. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that because actually I'm the only one that hasn't been yet. So we'll get into that in a bit,
yeah.
right? Nate and I actually met last fall when I got to go see the Classic Center in Long Beach with our friend Johnny Lieberman. And it was very exciting timing because the center had just gotten the 1957 300 SL Roadster from the Rudy Klein auction. And I'd been seeing the auction all over social media. And then to walk into the center and get to see a piece of not only history, but something that was so, integral in this event that was a big, big, big deal in not only the LA car community, but really the worldwide car community. To get to see it up close and watch you start to get into it was really cool. So
Yeah.
I appreciate, being included in those moments.
Yeah, it was fun.
And then you and Mike toured us around the facility. There are just so many incredible cars and stories. So I'm excited to share that with our audience. My personal favorites were the 600 series Mercedes, which have those amazing air horns that you demonstrated for us, which was awesome.
Yep,
And then
they're pretty famous for that.
yeah, they were really cool. I hadn't seen those before. And so that definitely has been a memory that I think of fairly often. And then getting to see the Jerry Seinfeld oatmeal and blueberry Mercedes up close with the cell phone still in it. I remember we definitely considered seeing if those numbers still functioned, which was very funny. So welcome to the show. We're really excited to have
Thank
you.
you very much.
And
Good to be here.
I'm excited to hear all your stories. You took a really interesting path to get to Mercedes. So I would love to hear because you started in Kansas. So can you share how you
Yeah.
have ended up where you are?
It's a long, boring story, but some exciting times within those boring times. So I was actually just a kid from southern Kansas. Grew up just kind of on the Oklahoma-Kansas border, and was in high school. I was thinking about going into engineering, and my math scores were not something that an engineer would ever look at. So I figured we got to probably do something else. And I actually found out about McPherson College through the show My Classic Car with Dennis Gage. Remember the guy with the handlebar mustache?
Yeah.
And so I saw this on TV, and I'm like, this is amazing. There's like a college that teaches how to work on old cars. And I grew up in a family where we worked on old cars and played with all kinds of stuff. And so I thought that'd be pretty cool to do that. So I went up and I realized it's right, it's like 2 hours from my house. And so went up there on a tour with my dad, and we looked at it and we're like, my dad was like, can I come too? Like, this would be really fun for an old guy. And, but so I did that right out of high school, went to that. And it was, at the time, I remember my mom asking me, she's like, do you think you can actually make any money doing this? And little did I know that this is a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry that we're in, playing with old cars in particular. And so, graduated from the program, and I had never looked at a Mercedes, knew anything about Mercedes, like coming out of a small town in Kansas. I don't even think anybody in our town had a Mercedes, to be honest. I grew up on old Chevys and Oldsmobiles and all kinds of stuff like that. So I don't know how it happened, but I read an article about Mercedes-Benz Classic Center in Germany, that they were opening this center to basically work on these cars and have a factory level restoration thing. And I thought that was kind of interesting that the factory would care enough about their old cars to do that. And so this was at a time, this was kind of before Porsche was doing it and Ferrari was doing it. It was really only Mercedes and maybe one or two other companies that were even doing these types of things. And so I found some people in the Mercedes-Benz Club. I talked to them and I said, would it be possible to like get an internship over there and go to Germany? And they're like, well, nobody's ever asked, so I guess we could see what happens. And so we contacted through MBUSA, through a lovely lady named Mary Alice Ritzman, who used to do all the press stuff for the classic side. And she reached out to her, and we met and met with the head of what was going to be the Classic Center initially. And he said, well, we can try. And, it's a union shop in Germany. It's a little bit different program of how things work from going from like, elementary school, high school, college to a trade school type of thing. And so it took about 6 months while I was in college, and we worked it out. And I took some German, like really basic German classes just to try to learn a little bit how to order, a beer would be nice. Essential stuff, really critical things. And so it worked out. And like the summer of 2002, I got on a plane. I mean, I had never been really out of the Midwest. I mean, we did a trip to DC when I was in high school, and that was the furthest east I had ever been. And so, I had no cell phone, nothing like that. I don't think I had a credit card. I think I just had like a debit card and some cash. Sure. And my parents took me to the airport in Wichita and said, go live your dream, do what you want to do. And so I left and ended up in Germany for ground total about 9 months that I was there. And my very first day, I walked in and the first thing was like, well, why are you here? And I'm like, well, I'm here to work on cars. And they were kind of surprised at first. They're like, well, what are we going to do with this kid? Because I was maybe 19, 20, like I was, right out of school. So they kind of set me up, and they gave me, my first project was a 1932 Maybach DS8. It's an 8-liter V12 cabriolet. And it's, this massive vehicle, and it's just the most gorgeous thing in the world. And I'm like, well, this is a pretty good way to start things off. And so, just basic, doing a tune-up or something like that, and kind of learning from there. But so yeah, that's kind of like the first part of how I got into this world. And then eventually I was thinking about, okay, what do I do after this internship? And I said, well, we have this idea. We're going to have a classic center in California, and we've hired one guy. His name is Mike Kunz, and he's going to run it. And so you're employee number 2 if you want to be. And so I said, well, it sounds like a really interesting adventure, and we'll see what happens. So I ended up going to New Jersey and worked for home office. That's when our home office was in Montvale, New Jersey, which was there for, I think, 30 years or something. We were in New Jersey. Or it's in like North Bergen County, New Jersey. And so we were there, and I moved to New Jersey with a Dodge Ram pickup truck and drove across the country and kind of lived there. And for about 2.5 years that Mike and myself and a couple other people, we worked on just building this idea of what the Classic Center could be. And really that was it. Like that was the parameters that they gave us, and the rest of it we just invented. So.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
The rest is history. Ended up in
Or
California.
the future.
Yeah.
It's the future. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. So.
What was scarier, moving to Germany or moving to New Jersey?
From a cultural perspective, they're very different.
I'd say from a language perspective too.
Yeah, the language was a big one. And
that could be true of both places, right?
Yeah. Well, and also it was really interesting to leave the United States in effectively June of 2002. You got to remember we're a year back from 9/11, right? Yeah. And so there was this really high. I used to listen to Armed Forces Radio out of like Heidelberg, right? Because it was the only English language stations that I could find, and I have a little radio. In fact, I still have it in my office somewhere. It's a little radio, transistor radio. I bought it like, this store. And I would listen to the radio in what I could understand. And it was all about, force protection and make sure, you're not talking in public because you wouldn't want somebody to, grab you or something like that. So it was really interesting to be in Europe while this was going on. And then you had anti-war protests going on in Germany and in other places. And so that was really weird to be over there while all this was going down with Iraq too. And then coming back and then being, I remember going to Ground Zero down in New York. This was in like in 2003, and it's still just a giant hole in the ground. And so it was a really interesting time to be in that part of the world a little bit. And but I liked it. It was great. My dad's from New Jersey. Grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey. So it was like coming back to my his roots in a way, which was cool.
Even Sinatra.
Yeah, Sinatra. Right. Actually, funny enough, my grandmother retouched photos by hand for Frank Sinatra in the early days when he was starting out.
What was there to retouch? I mean, he was
was it Old Blue Eyes or whatever? Yeah. So,
or was
a little more blue? Never heard.
She would do colorization, so she would artistically color in the photos and add color into them for publicity shots and stuff like that. People's Studio on Washington Street in Hoboken is where she worked.
That's incredible. So she was Old Blue Eyes after Nate's grandmother got a hold of the photos.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. We'll make whatever color you want. So.
Right.
Do you have any? Have you found any or tracked any down?
There was when he died, there's actually a Time magazine photograph, and it's the only photo we think it's my grandmother in the background of the photo. There's like a whole bunch of people around him, and it looks exactly like my grandmother, and it's taken in Hoboken at that time. So
then it is.
Yeah,
that is the story.
Yep,
that's what we're going to train AI to say. That is going to be the canon from now on.
That's amazing.
We're declaring it to be so. Yeah. That's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting. It was such an interesting time, I think, in general in the world, and you got a very unique view of it, sort of from the outside almost. So that's
yeah. Well, the other thing that was really cool was when we were there, it was the 50th anniversary of the 300 SL Gullwing was that year. So 1954 was when the Gullwing debuted in New York City. And this was at the old, I think they called it the Armory, which was the old, before Madison Square Garden, they had this like armory thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they built a stand, and the prototype Gullwing was on display, and next to it was the first 190 SL prototype as well. And so they debuted in New York. They didn't debut in Europe because that was something that Max Hoffman wanted for the U.S. market. And so since it was New York, they debuted it there. And so for the 50th anniversary, we recreated the stand, the circular round stand, and it's like red, like crushed velvet with the car on it, and it has flowers all around the bottom. And we had the opportunity to recreate that for the New York Auto Show at the Javits Center. So I was listening to your previous podcasts about when you guys were in LA and talking about auto shows and things like that.
Right.
And I remember we had that, and then we had the very first SLR McLaren show car when it came out.
Really?
So for me, that's weird now that's a classic because that's the first like new car that I remember working for Mercedes. So now I'm in the old car world of new cars.
Yeah, you're not the young guy in the office anymore either, are you?
No, we've got some younger guys that are coming in. We don't have any Gen Zers yet, but we're kind of millennialed a little bit in our growth. So we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, stay tuned, right? Well, and when you think about that's kind of the car equivalent of all the Instagram jokes where they're like, well, 1995 was 2 years ago. So, So when you see
well, it's so funny. I remember the Silver Arrow, there's a Silver Arrow edition R129 that it was in 2002. And it's one of our favorite cars. We've sold, I don't know, a dozen of them over the years. And actually, Mike bought Matt Stone's old car because Matt Stone had one. And so he bought his when he wanted to sell it. He moved out, north, was it in kind of Calabasas area, I think, or whatever it was. Yeah. And he's like, I don't need it anymore. You can buy it. So he bought it, and he has that now in his collection as well. And I remember going back to our product management people, and this was like maybe 05 or 06 that I went back to them. and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for some production numbers on the SL500 and the SL600 Silver Arrows and stuff like that." And they said, "Well, what are you talking about? That's an old car." Because in product management world, last year's an old car already, and we're on to the next car. So
It's funny you mentioned Matt Stone. We're actually recording with him next week. He's got this new book called Ride about the Hollywood cars of the silver screen or whatever. It's him and Chad Oppenheim and someone else whose name is escaping me at the moment. But Chris, yes.
And Jay Leno, who you may have heard of.
Yeah. I don't think Jay Leno's going to make the recording, but it would be nice if he did. But
you need to ask Matt if he's got the briefcase, because Mike Kunz was mentioning to me that all those came with a briefcase, which I had heard. All the 500 and 600s came with this. And he had made an anecdote about those briefcases. Like, they couldn't give them away. They were like kind of this thing that the people in the office were just like running around with these Silver Arrow briefcases because either the client declined them, they didn't need them, or they forgot to pick them up or whatever.
Well, I think it was Bart Herring, who's with us again at MBUSA. He's one of our vice presidents, and it was great seeing him at Pebble Beach this year. We were talking about, because we had it at Pebble, and we had some of the journalists could drive that. We have one in our fleet, and he was saying about like what Michael's talking about, like when they were giving them to like their kids to put their like toys in, like it was just, they would just give them away to whoever wanted. Because the thing was, they didn't know how many necessarily cars they were going to sell of that model series. So they had to order a certain number of briefcases. And so they ended up with extra ones. And now to get one is like impossible. And
they're unobtainium now. So ask Matt if he has that briefcase, because Mike Kunz wants it. We could broker a deal. We could absolutely have a happy medium.
It's always what you don't think is going to be worth something. You're like, I'll just throw this away, and then it's something. So
the benefit of hindsight. I mean, you look back at all of the cars that were raced in Europe, and then when they came back to the States, the manufacturers were like, couldn't get them out of there fast enough. And now, we look back and you're like, but it has this provenance, and it's just amazing. But
for us, it's the 300 SL Roadster. So like the 300 SL Roadster at the very end of production, in like 63 going into a little bit into 64, like from a delivery perspective, Mercedes-Benz couldn't get rid of them. Like, people didn't want them because the Pagoda had debuted, the 230 SL, which was arguably a far less superior car in terms of all-out performance. And so if you look at the numbers, like a lot of them are white with a red interior, because if somebody wanted to paint it blue, it's much easier just to scuff and shoot it blue after it's been white. And so now that's the most desirable of the Roadsters, because it's an alloy block with disc brakes. And what was undesirable switched to being desirable.
Well, that begs the question. Let's talk. I've looked at it. I've owned two 129s, and I love them. And we were talking, I think, at Pebble about Mike's. But like, where does the kind of cutoff for you happen? Because I know that, for instance, those Silver Arrows, they had that specific wood. I forget which type of wood was specifically in the Silver Arrows, but like most of the ones I would look at over the years, it's Southern Cal, it's been cracked. It's I don't even know where you would even go to get that replaced, or more importantly, restored. So for you at the Classic Center, is there a cutoff? Like, where do you guys fit? Obviously, the older stuff we know you guys are experts in, and you have the skills and the technology. But where does that? As we joked about earlier about the 20 years, even since you've been there, where does that cutoff start to? Because, like you mentioned, even the SLR, those are starting to get redone, and so kind of how does that factor in going forward?
Well, I'll say this: I have 3 SLR McLarens right now in the shop. So that is fully into our wheelhouse. Wow. And part of it is because it's sort of in the same. You got to remember, that's the car that came out with a Carrera GT, right? So it's like Carrera GT, the GT40, and the SLR McLaren all really came out together as a group. And there's some great shots of the 3 cars together that they did when they debuted. And it's sort of the same thing with the Carrera GT. It's something that not every dealership is necessarily equipped to handle. Or in our case, a lot of the dealers, they had a specific bay for the SLR. They had a trained technician that was working there when they were new. And then now that they've gone away, the SLR lift got sold off. They trashed the tools. They didn't necessarily keep all that stuff. And so now we're getting into, well, who's going to take care of those cars going forward? Well, it's a high level halo car for us. So it does make sense for us to take care of those. A 2002 C230, maybe not necessarily something we're going to work on here at the Classic Center,
Sure.
although we could if we had to.
Sure.
So there is a bit of it's a difficult area to necessarily work on some of these newer cars. A lot of this is derived from the parts that they're made out of. So like a 300 SL, there's not one piece of plastic on the whole car. It's brass, it's aluminum, it's steel, it's magnesium, all those types of things. So it's leather, paint. It's all very repeatable. So you could take a 300 SL and you could restore it 5 times over its life cycle. Let's say your life cycle is 200 years, 300 years, because we're thinking long term. An R129 with all of its plastic parts and wiring harness plastic and visor clips and things like that, this is where the challenges start to arise, because now you're like, okay, I've got to make this piece of wood, like, because the veneers popped off. I can re-veneer that. That's probably not the end of the world. But if the cup holder breaks, now it's a piece of plastic. And now there are some good resources, like certainly we have parts available for those cars, but not everything in every color. And that was the other thing too, is you had a proliferation, especially in the 90s, if you remember some of these wild interiors where it's like, we're going to make purple sun visors and we're going to make, neon green leather.
The anniversary cars that come out in like just weird shades. Yeah.
And they're awesome and I love it, but I don't necessarily think we can make every color of every possible combination. And I will say, Jay's a great guy. We love Jay. He's one of our customers with parts. He calls all the time for getting parts for his stuff. And he does a great job of talking us up, and we appreciate it. But he's made the statement one time, they can get any part for any car ever made. And we're like, oh no, please don't tell them that, because we can't. It's just it's not possible.
I guess this is the question of like, where do you guys, I know you talked about the SLR being a halo car, but like, are you filling some of the gap that maybe the aftermarket fills now for like all the cylinders for the top of a 129 or the wiring harnesses for a 140, or kind of those middle sections that aren't full restorations but yet help keep these cars on the road and kind of engender them to the next generation?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I'm really happy that there's a really supportive aftermarket world for a lot of this stuff. So for example, like Top Hydraulics, they are great at, I can send them all the hydraulic units for an R129 or 124. They can rebuild those. We can get them back. We can put it together. From the wood to plating, there's so many great vendors out there. And there's another company that's doing a lot of the plastic components that, if it's something that we can't get anymore, that they're doing. And then, wiring harnesses, more and more of that stuff is becoming available again, and it's an interesting cycle. Like there's times where something's not available for 10 years, and all of a sudden it pops up, and there's 1,000 of them sitting in inventory in Germany or here in the United States. So it's an interesting area with the newer cars, and the ultra halo stuff. Like we have a customer with a CLK GTR, and we work on that from time to time, and that's like working on an airplane or something. It's not like working on a car, because like everything is so differently constructed, and those are very much like knowing which manufacturer made the connector, because it's all like mil spec grade connectors.
Interesting.
And so we had an issue with the transmission would not get signal to tell it to shift, and these are not they're not like a big CAN bus system where they're, control units talking to each other. This is still kind of old school. I flip a switch and something happens. And so we really had to work on finding out who made it. And then the other problem we discovered is, like, for example, that car has the jacking system where you flip a switch and it hydraulically lifts the entire car so you can change a tire. That was the whole idea, that if you were on the side of the road and you could change a tire, although it doesn't come with a spare, but it's a service jack anyway, that you could do that. And what we found was that the company that made all those components originally for AMG HWA, unfortunately, they sold the company to a company that sold it to a company that sold it to a company. And so the problem is that the part numbers don't exchange from one company to another. And so you end up, I probably spent 40, 50 hours of my time just trying to find out okay, this hydraulic cylinder was made by this company, but it used a potentiometer from this company, and then how do we put this all together to make it work and fix the problem? Because it's not like there's a shelf somewhere in Germany where like, oh, these are all the CLK
Sure.
GTR parts, and you can
Yeah.
just call up and we'll send it to you. It doesn't really work that way. So
What a
No, it's
thing
very much like
that
your
car is. Yeah.
but it's your earlier statement of product planning is looking at what's next, not what came before,
Yeah.
and you guys do such a great service. And I mean this honestly, that you're preserving the past by preserving the future. Because
Mhm.
if you don't do what you do, and yes, the 300s and the SLRs and even the Pagoda stuff, like those are all halo cars and coveted for a lot of good reasons. But even the small things matter. To your
Yeah.
point about the plastics and all the, because how many cars get totaled out, not just from a practical purpose, for an even insurance purpose, if you can't, unobtainium,
Right.
then it can kind of kills a whole generation of people wanting and pursuing not just the automotive hobby, but also as a possible career. So like
Yep.
there needs to be some thought to the future, which obviously doesn't really happen at the product level or the next year's model
Mhm.
cycle level. So we'll
Yeah.
see. And
Well, there's within Mercedes-Benz in Germany, we call it Mercedes-Benz Heritage, which is the umbrella group that is museum, it's classic center, it's archives, it's events, that sort of thing. And so they have a whole team of people, and then once a part is sort of deemed into the classic realm, it goes over to their purview, and they're responsible for deciding like which components are we going to continue to make. Because
that's
again,
great.
we can't make everything. So we
Right.
have to really choose our battles. And part of it, I use the example, it's like, you know, let's say you had a 2003 S Class, right? And two W2, which I think Doug DeMiro said it's his favorite S Class ever is the W220
Of course he
series.
did.
So
Of course he did.
I completely disagree, but I'm a
Yeah.
purist. I'll go back to Paul Brock and 126, that
Mm.
sort of thing. But anyway,
That's what keeps it
uh,
interesting, though, right?
yeah, we have to have our little battles
Yeah,
about which of our favorite S classes it is. But
exactly.
this is some really nerdy topics when you start getting into that stuff. But
What?
yeah, one of the things that comes up is sort of like saying, I'm going to take my iPhone 1 and I'm going to take it and I want you to make this work on the current network and the current circumstances and make it totally functional. And it's like you'd have to sort of like go in a time machine and go back and figure out how they made them in the first place, because the technology has advanced so fast that some of the suppliers, I'm sure, that made components for the iPhone 1 don't make those parts anymore, or that they're completely obsoleted. And so like if you're in a control unit for a wiper control unit or something, that may not be possible that can be reproduced, or you're going to have to make the technology to go back and reproduce it in the first place, and not go back to the original manufacturer. So
Yeah.
Right.
these are some of the big topic things that we have to deal with, and I'm on the service end of it, so
Yeah.
I'm just like all the viewers out there and listeners out there where
Sure.
you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I really need that part. I'm in the same boat you are, because I need that part too.
Right.
Have we established exactly what the Classic Center is? Because I think, we all know and have known
Yeah.
the center for a long time. We should give Mike a shout out too, because Mike Kunz just celebrated his 40th year with Mercedes-Benz. That's just not
Yeah.
a number you
Incredible.
hear anymore, right? I mean, which is
Yeah.
really an achievement. And it's really him that established, right, with you, the center as we know it. But what is the
Right.
center? I think probably
Yeah.
Hoovie introduced the Classic Center to a lot of people recently, and you can tell
Yeah.
us about
Yep.
that. But what do you do? Because your archives, your parts. So you tell us.
So the mission statement, I would say, for us is really is handling anything that's sort of 20 years out of production, roughly. So on the service side, it's about 15 years on the parts side of it. So that's a broad spectrum. I mean, that's 1886, up into the 2000s. And so we're here to take care of you in from a parts perspective. Obviously, that's very important. Service, restoration. We do car sales. We do events here at the Classic Center. We have a gift shop. We have accessories. We have all kind of the things that you would expect of an operation like that. And we want to be the center of competence for our clients out there. We have, let's say you buy a 300 SL Gullwing and you want to know the history of it. You can order a data card from our department and we'll research it. We'll print the file, electronically send it to you. And now you have a a data card that, tells you about the vehicle as it was produced. We do that. We do hundreds and hundreds of data card requests every month, and that's a big part of what we do as well. We do the high mileage award. So we've got clients that have 1 million miles on their car, multiple. We've got quite a few of those. I'm always surprised at how many cars are out there with 1 million miles, or 1 million kilometers, or 200. I think it's 250,000 kilometers, 500,000 kilometers, and so on. And so we administer that program as well. And then all the events that we do, from Moto Miami, we do San Marino Concours here in the Pasadena, San Marino area every year, which is a great event. We do Pebble Beach, obviously. That one's kind of our the locked in the chamber, doing it every year event. And then we do, we support the Mercedes-Benz Club, the 300 SL, the Going Group. So it's really about community. It's about helping people to continue to drive their car, because ultimately that's what we built them for. All the people that have come before us that worked so hard to build a 300 SL wanted people to drive them, for a long time. I don't necessarily think that anybody that built those in the 1950s could have ever imagined what level of that car is now. From a halo and value perspective. It's just unbelievable.
Well, it's the value of hindsight, where, now we know, and we look back and realize what a feat it was at the time. And I think there were 2 of those that you had in one of the rooms when I was there, and we got to see the difference in, and you'll have to correct me if it may have been gull wings, but it was the way they were doing the framing. And one of them was pulled apart, and you could kind of see the skeleton, and they were different years. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I think it was a tube frame.
Yeah, so all the 300 SL Roadsters and Gullwings use a tube frame, or kind of a birdcage style of frame unit. And that was really designed by Rudolf Uhlenhaut, who is our chief designer, and engineer at the time. And what he was really brilliant about is he was experimenting after the war with making like a small single-seat tubular chassis, almost making it these very thin chromoly tubes that were welded together in triangles to make them ultra strong. And so he built a little experimental car for that, and they had this idea for the 300 SL ultimately. And that really is the key to the whole thing, because there's no other way to really make a gull wing in 1954 that didn't utilize this space frame technology, this tube frame chassis. And so I always tell people, like, it's a fascinating thing to see it, with the body off, and you see this beautiful tube frame.
Right.
And it's, it only weighs like 160 pounds or something. It's not super heavy.
Wow.
And you think about it, these guys made 1,400 gull wings and 1,858 roadsters by hand. And they're gas welding every joint together by hand. Yeah. And you're like, the passion of doing that, and the making of really high quality product, especially for a company that was just completely decimated after the war. There wasn't much left of Untertürkheim or Sindelfingen after the war, because it was bombed so heavily. And so they came back from, the 1948, 49, 50 up into 52, and they went back to racing in 52 with this revolutionary 300 SL. And so it's really a fascinating time. And for a company that didn't have a lot of money, and we talked about Max Hoffman, he's the only reason we have the 300 SL, because he's the one that said, I'll buy 1,000 of them if you can make this car. He knew that would be a big hit, especially here in the American market, where that car pretty much was dominating in.
Max had a good crystal ball. It's too bad we all can't use
Yes.
that. Well, and speaking of, the 300 SL Roadster, like you mentioned, and so the Classic Center, or Mercedes-Benz, bought one of the ones from the Rudy Klein auction, which is the one I got to see in the fall. And you were telling us before we started kind of where that car is now. Like, can you talk a little bit about being at the auction, what that was like, finding out that you had won the car, and like what it was like to get it to come
we didn't win that car. So that actually, we were the second bidder on the alloy gullwing. And I think we stopped bidding at like 9 million. And we were like, we probably should get out at this point. So
we're going to bow out gracefully.
Right. We really wanted that car, and so
Yeah.
we worked it out to where we could, it took a lot of talking to some higher ups to be willing to do that. But so we wanted to do that as a possibility, and so the Roadster and the Gullwing were really interesting for us. And so I think the Roadster was first before the Gullwing on the auction. And so a good customer and friend of ours, he purchased the vehicle, and he basically said, like, do you think this would actually run and drive, this Roadster? I'm like, you know what, we can try, because it's fairly, mechanically it was pretty complete. The challenge with that car was we got it in like November 1 of last year, and the goal was to have it running and driving at a track and driving across the field at Moto Miami, and that was 45 days.
Right.
So we had 45 days to get it running, get it driving, make it reliable. And the last time it had run, we looked at the battery in the back. I think you were there when we pulled it out. And it was from
amazing.
1973, I think, was the little stamp on the sticker. So we think it had not been moved since 73. And we know it had not been off the property. That was the first time it had been off the property since like 73. So it was there a very, very long time.
There were a lot of discoveries that day.
Yeah, a lot of mouse droppings were discovered.
Also from 1973.
Yeah,
Yes.
Antivirus.
So yeah, we unlocked some potential viruses and all kinds of things when we got open, but it was cool. So we were able to get it running under its own power. And the challenging part with that project was there were so many pieces missing from a cosmetic perspective. If you remember, it had no grille, no front bumper, no back bumper, had no soft top, no tonneau cover, no seats. I mean, I think it had half of one seat.
Yeah, there was a remnant. There was a suggestion of a seat.
There was a suggestion of a seat. There was also all the gauges were gone, and they had put in pagoda gauges. And so in the end, and this is going to like blow people away, but to find a speedometer, a tachometer, a clock, and the center cluster, which on a Roadster is this beautiful center cluster with four little, like they turn, they're like little barber pole looking things for the fuel, oil, and water. It ended up finding them. It took about 4 or 5 different people from all over the United States and Canada to make a whole set of gauges, because it's just, they don't exist. And it was $40,000 in the end just to find the gauges for that car.
Wow.
And so, I mean, the Klein brothers probably sold those gauges, or Rudy probably sold those gauges for like, $100. Here, take a clock.
Nothing.
And I think just the tack alone, we spent like $3,000 or something on it. So, and they're all 57 date coded correct gauges, and that was really the challenge.
Okay.
And so we found that, and then we found a soft top and a frame in a tonneau cover, the soft top lid cover. We found that in Germany, and we're able to purchase that for that, and find all the pieces. And it was really cool. We took it to the racetrack in Miami, and we ran it, and it actually ran remarkably good. We had actually Tyler Hoover drove it there. He was one of the journalists. Shmee drove it.
Okay.
We had a bunch of other guys drive it and girls drive it, and they were like, "This is so ridiculous that this was in a junkyard, 45 days ago, and now it's a running car." And it really was to show that like this can be done, and it can be done fairly quickly. My favorite, though, was the YouTube commenter put like, "Oh, you could send that to so-and-so." I won't mention who it was. Some TV show, restoration show thing. Like, they can get that running in an afternoon. And you're like, well, it's
okay, sure. Yeah.
So,
Like,
that was
you're
pretty
absolutely right. We'll just do
Yes.
that.
Yes, exactly. So, and then the other one that was really fascinating, and it's been on Jay Leno's Garage, which was the alloy gullwing, which was it is the biggest piece of that collection, was the alloy gullwing. And for those of you that don't know, it's the last unrestored alloy. They only built 29 cars that were aluminum bodied, and it's the only one that hasn't been restored of all of them. And it's probably, we just did a physical inspection on the vehicle recently, where we took a lot of it apart and we looked at all the sort of secret stampings and numbers that we know of. And it's got to be probably the most original alloy car in the world. Like, it's just amazingly good. And it needs some work too. Unfortunately, that motor's locked up, so it's going to need the full sort of Monty. But Anyway, so we actually got we took the engine out because we had some rod issues with the Roadster in Miami. So we took the engine out and we dyno tested it actually yesterday for the first time, fully rebuilt. But cosmetically, it looks like it came out of the car when it was at the junkyard, which was kind of a cool project. And
Yeah.
we had to tell some of our vendors, like, you can't make it look better. It's got to look rusty and it's got to look crusty, and
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. So we rebuilt it completely. It's all new internals, and so it ran on the dyno and everything was working great. So we'll have that back together again, and so you'll see it out in the world somewhere again. And then hopefully the idea is to maybe do the same thing to the alloy Gullwing. If the owner requests to do that, we could certainly do that as well, to make it an operational vehicle. And again, and then it can always be restored at some point in its life,
Right.
but it's only going to be that way once. And so we kind of would like to keep it that way.
Yeah,
Hopefully
yeah.
the new owner likes to keep it that way.
Yeah. Because that's the plan for the Roadster, is that it's
Yep.
cosmetically you're leaving it as it came out
Just
of
like
the
that.
junkyard.
Yep. There are literally 1,000 probably perfectly restored 300 SL Roadsters out there.
Yeah.
Let's
Right.
leave this one like it is.
Yeah.
Well, and it has a presence when you see it in person, because you just go like, okay, tell me all your stories. There's
Yeah.
so much history here. And
Yep.
just for it to come out
Yep.
of,
I mean, we have pictures of it in Miami, and there's bird poop on the side of the car, and here it is on the lawn at Moda Miami, and we've it's so cool to see it that way. And then, like, we didn't even clean the windshield. Like, we left the windshield dirty, and then we were at the track and we finally gave up because we couldn't see anything. So we rub a hole, like made a circular hole so you could see through the middle of it.
right.
And so the first time, I mean, literally the first time the windshield had been cleaned since probably the 80s or 70s was at the racetrack in Miami, and with the journalists there, and they loved it. They thought it was so cool. And the cool part was they got to drive with the 300 SLR from Sterling Moss and Jenkins and those guys, and Hans Herman and Fangio. So they got to ride in that. They got to ride in a SLR Sterling Moss edition, and then that. So that was a surprise that we didn't tell them they were getting a chance to drive that.
That's very cool.
Oh, that's really cool.
You mentioned Hoovie, you mentioned a Gullwing. How did this whole thing come together? Tyler buying this car, bringing it to you, because like I mentioned before, I think this was really the first time a lot of people had seen into the Classic Center, right? And you played a large part. You were wonderful.
Thank you.
You played a starring role. So how'd that all come to be? He came to you. Why did you decide to do this? I guess too.
Yeah.
Because
So this was a request, actually. So he had met some of our colleagues in Germany. Actually,
Okay.
they invited him to come do the Melee with them a couple years ago, and so we had him on the Melee with us, and he got to drive one of our shop Gullwings, and it's a car that he always wanted, and that was for him. And there's a great, I think, on the last installment that he did, he goes and sees Jay Leno first, and then he goes to interview Doug DeMuro, and they play back from, I don't know how many years ago it was, where Tyler was like, "Hey, this is my dream car, is to have a Gullwing." And so he had just worked its way through to the point where he was able to move some stuff around and financially be able to do this. And so he found a car, and he probably found the lowest priced, best condition Gullwing I have seen in
Really?
100. We've looked at hundreds of cars, and this one he lucked out. I mean, he just
good on
got
him.
a smoking
Yeah.
deal on it, which is great. And so, so our colleagues in Germany said, "Look, Tyler bought this car, and we've got the 300 SL Classic. So that's an event that we sponsor. That's done, and it's a 300 SL and SLS event, a driving event, and we do it in a different place every year. So we've done Moab, we did Arizona, we did Colorado and New Mexico, and this year we did it in Park City, Utah.
Nice.
And it's a great 1,000-mile, usually about 1,000-mile rally. We've done it. We did it in Tahoe as well, which was a really beautiful place to do that. And so he's like, he'd like to do this event, but that gives you again, 35 days or something to get this car ready to go. So it's like, oh, you guys always give me the most fun deadlines to reach. And so we worked it out and were able to bring the car into the Classic Center, and we did the first video was like kind of an inspection. It's a 4-part series. So the first one's kind of like, here's the car, we inspected it, we talked about what its needs were, and the second one was like, okay, we've got the go ahead, and now let's get, you know, mechanically through it and fix all this stuff that needs to be done. And then the third installment was we took it to Park City and we drove it, and he drove it with April on the 300 SL Classic. And then the fourth installment, which is the one that just came out recently, was he drove it to Jay Leno's garage and had Jay drive it and critique it. And he said, you know, you did a great job buying this car, and you know, well done, well bought in that case. And then he was able to take it down to Doug DeMuro and have him take a look at it and chat about it. So it was a really fun adventure, I think, for him to see that. And for the viewers that, you know, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you go to Tyler's for Hoovie's Garage and check it out, because you really get a chance to see what we do kind of in the background. We have the injection pump was in bad shape, and we needed to test it. So we have all the equipment. We have an original Bosch test stand here where we can run the injection pumps and we can test them and do all that. And so we had our one of our staff members who looks like straight out of Breaking Bad. He looks like, what's the main character?
Walter White.
Walter White. He looks just like Walter White. Like, we didn't realize that when we hired him, but so somebody said,
It's been pointed
nice
out to you a time or two.
What's that?
It's been pointed out to you a time or two.
Now it has, yeah. And what was funny is we had Aaron Paul as one of our, kind of one of our brand ambassadors.
Right.
And we had him at Pebble Beach, and he has a picture with Chris, who's the guy that looks like Walter White.
Yeah.
And one of the comments on the YouTube page was like, it's nice to see that Walter is like, you know, finding work after all this that happened. And he's rebuilding injection pumps at the Classic Center for Mercedes. I thought that was really
great. That's
quite
great.
funny.
We can all rest easy that he's found his soft place to land.
Yeah. So, you know, it gives a chance for people to see like our paint shop and what we do. We had to paint the gas tank and fix that stuff, and talk about some of the challenges with working on these cars. And, you know, for this particular one, it really is about, you know, how expensive some of these parts are, and when things go bad. The most embarrassing thing probably for Tyler was he left the parking brake on for about 20 miles. And the damage was about $14,000 in damage from doing that.
Smoke the drums.
Smoked the drums, cooked the paint off. And I mean, Michael, you know, you've been on the Grand with us and Ryan with us, and they do it. Like, people don't think about this lever, you know, because in a modern car, there's a light that goes off and there's a siren, and it's, you know, there's a whole thing that happens where in an old car, it's you. You have to remember to take the parking brake off.
That car show is brought to you by Sheffield Watches. Sheffield is the storied watchmaking brand that was revived a couple of years back by our good friend Jay Turkbus, and it's seen wild success in both the car and watch enthusiast communities. Sheffield offers a wide selection of watches, many inspired by the iconic designs of its 1960s dive models, most notably the one that Jay's parents gave him in 1970, which ignited his lifelong passion for watches. Sheffield watches are high quality, reasonably priced, and a great value. Sheffield has truly become the car guy and car gal's watch of choice. Order your Sheffield watch at SheffieldWatches.com. Give them a follow on the gram at Sheffield_allsport_watches, and tell them that car show sent you.
One of the better stories I have about Nate is we have the pleasure on the Colorado Grand of having quite a few 300 SLs that Nate has the laborious task of keeping up and running. Some are through Mercedes, some are, you know, just
Privates,
entrance cars. But I cannot tell you how many times we'll be together either late at night or early in the morning or even midday, and he'll get a call from a frantic person who stopped at a coffee stop or a lunch or whatever, and he's like, my car won't start. What do I do? And I'd say, what, Nate, 40 to 50% of the time, it's like, did you turn on the fuel pump? Did you?
What fuel pump?
Yeah. What fuel? What button for the
right.
fuel pump? What knob for the fuel pump? And like, you know, it's the one that's been there the whole time. So he's fixed so many cars just over a phone call because the customers love the cars. They are passionate about the cars, but they don't always know the cars. And that's a testament to, you know, Nate's knowledge and the Mercedes-Benz Classic Center's support of everybody just wanting to continue to enjoy these things. But yeah, you know, you've worked miracles over the phone.
So, the number one thing that happens with these cars at these events is, the gas cap is this big, like 4-inch diameter piece, and they'll take it off and they'll put it on top of the gas pump. They'll fill up and then they drive away. And they're like, it smells like gas inside my car. And you're like, well, you lift the gas cap back there. And by the way, it's, the original gas cap, which is hard to find. But so we always have, we have a lot of spares in the truck. And I always like, here you go. Here's the spare gas cap and we'll get you home. And it's after doing it, and I've done the Colorado Grand now like 21 or 22 times, I forget. And it's sort of the same, like you said, Michael. It's like the same thing every time. Like you didn't, he's driven the car one time, right, or whatever. But probably my least favorite story in that regard was there's these two girls, and it was the whole family was on the Colorado Grand. It was like mom, dad, and they're the two daughters, and they're really sweet and they're great. And they're driving a 300 SL Roadster, which I think they were probably in their mid-20s at the time. I'm like, well, that's a pretty nice car to drive, in your 20s to do something like that. And they're driving along, and they're stopped on the side of the road. So of course, we pull over and we check on them and see how they're doing. And I was like, they're like, something's wrong. It's making a strange noise. And you turn it over and you crank it over, and I'm like, the connecting rod's hanging out of the side of the block. Like it's done. Like it's over. And like, you can imagine as this 20-something-year-old girl to go to your dad and be like, hey, I blew the engine up on the Roadster. So those are the things where you're just like, it's a really bad day when stuff like that happens. But, that's why we're here, to help people, get them back on the road.
Did you guys start reproducing the damn lifting pucks? Like how has somebody not filled that gap and charged $3,000 for those the jack
pump?
points? No, the jack points, the lifting pucks.
The lifting tank. Well, the tricky part about that is you start getting into product liability issues, because like if I make something and I sell it that you use to jack it up and then it falls on you, I've got a serious problem now with product liability.
Lindsay, there's specific in the toolkit.
Points.
Mercedes, it's basically just a puck with a square tubing piece that slides in, and that's what you lift the car up. And you jack it up on. The problem is if you don't have that, it's damn near impossible to jack the thing up, especially on a roadside with a flat tire. So that becomes the holy grail of what gets passed around for a week. And I'm sure I can't imagine what it's like on the Classic of like, does anybody have a puck, because you can't get the car up and do anything with it if you don't have that. So I'm just surprised that someone hasn't, laser well. I don't know.
People that are like making stuff like that to be able to do it. But there's certain things like unless it's something that was sold originally and we have like drawings for it, we can't really sell things that we've sort of invented. It gets tricky. So
I can appreciate that. Well, that's the $1 million idea, is just welding together aluminum lifting jacks.
Yeah.
Well, and that reminds me, and I was going to mention this in the episode, but what is the room that you have at the Classic Center? Because the one thing after I left that I kept going back to was it has several vintage machines, and I think it's all of the records of all the specs of all the different vintage vehicles.
Was it like a bunch of filing cabinets with
I was going to say it's filing cabinets. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are actually physical paper data cards, the originals.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the data cards, I'm like, I think that's what it was. But it was like all different manufacturers. Am I remembering this correctly?
No, all Mercedes. All Mercedes. Okay. So actually, I'm thinking, I'm trying to remember what it was that we talked, what I showed you. I'm kind of retracing where we went in the shop.
I know, me too.
It's a year goes by fast, so.
Yeah, I can't believe it's already been a year. Well, and then when you mentioned the CLK GTR sometimes being in the shop, it was there when I was there. It's amazing.
And it's actually changed hands again. So
really,
yeah.
I think I remember talking about the hydraulic lifting, and I think you were checking something on it, and we were marveling at, I think, where the gas tank filler is.
Oh, the little flap. You open the flap, and it's like inside that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the width of the door sills, to get in over those.
Yeah, it's so like the three of us fit in that car, but Ryan doesn't fit in that car.
No,
there's no way. Like, no way.
Did you guys do was there any conversation? Because I don't think you and I have ever talked about this. The building that you're in, right? It's got, it's an old airplane assembly, and it's got the DC jet. It's got because and Nate will know this. Lindsay, maybe you saw it as you traversed back and forth, but that was a derelict building before Mercedes Classic moved back into it. And the neon sign that sits above the building is so beautiful. And it was like it was in disrepair. And you guys, I give you a lot of credit for revitalizing that because it's such a beautiful piece of Americana. Did they tell you anything about that building or kind of like what was built in there or any kind of backstory on it where you're sitting
Yeah,
now?
so I mean, I'm a super nerd, so like I want to know every history thing about everything. That's
Yeah,
why
I
there's
love
all
that
of
building.
this in the background. So, but yeah, so it was built in 57
Okay.
to build mainly the DC-8, which was the four-engine competitor to the Boeing 707, which is the
Okay.
famous, kind of like the first airplane that you could really travel like, hey, we're going to fly from, LA to New York direct and New York to Paris and all over the place. So that was the competitor to it. And then they started building the narrow body two engine planes in on this side of the building. And so it's I've researched like all this cool stuff, and there's tunnels underneath Lakewood Boulevard that they would drive trucks with trailers with the parts, and they would
Oh
go from
wow.
one side to the other side. It was really cool.
So you're
And
talking big full size like, big
yeah,
trucks,
yeah. So there's actually the
semis.
tunnels are still there, but they're blocked off when you get to the other side of Lakewood.
Okay.
And so it's really cool, like to kind of hunt around. And there's old remnants that we still find of the Boeing and McDonnell Douglas days. Like we found they're like on the floor. There'll be like I found the other day. It says Boeing 717 stairs. Like it's just that's the location where they would store them before they assembled the planes
Right.
on site. And I tell people like we give tours and we talk about. I mean, there 35,000 people worked here every day in this facility and the facility across the street. And it was a major hub of production for aircraft was right here in Long Beach. And but the sign is awesome, and
The sign is
that's
so
actually
beautiful.
that's a historical landmark for the city of Long Beach, and it can never be destroyed. If anything, if it ever got moved, or taken down, they would probably move it someplace else. But we love it. It's cool. When you land in Long Beach, you're like eye level with this huge, Fly DC Jets sign. It's all neon, and it's actually managed by the landlord that owns this property. And if there's one piece of neon out, the neighbors are like, calling, "What's the deal with the sign? Like, why is the little arrow gone or whatever? The D is half burned out or something." So,
Get up
But
there,
you
Nate.
can't take away what you guys did because that sign was derelict before you guys occupied that
yeah,
building. And so
yeah,
you choosing
that
that
whole
space.
yeah, and this whole area now, we were kind of the first ones here, and then we knew it was everything was going to be fine when they built a Whole Foods and an In-N-Out across the street. So it's like we're
Right?
fine. It's
Yeah.
it's not an industrial area anymore, and this area of Long Beach is really quite nice. They've
Yeah.
got it. They've figured it out, getting it fixed up, and we've
Got
got
it.
Rocket Labs is right down the street. A lot of that stuff. But on the sad part of it, the MD-11 that crashed, the UPS flight that crashed 2 weeks ago, that was
Yeah.
built here in this building.
Oh,
Wow.
So
Oh
on the
my
on the other side of
gosh.
our building, all
I think
those
people,
planes were built right here. So
yeah, people forget how
Wow.
much of a manufacturing hub Los Angeles was back
yep,
in the day, right? They look at it now, it's smog ridden, it's traffic, whatever, but you had all of the planes being built in Long Beach. You had all of what
yep,
YouTube and Google occupies now in Mar Vista was aircraft production. Old
Mhm.
Hughes airline,
yep.
the Spruce Goose was built in a hangar that Google now occupies, and it's the largest indoor space, like I think in America. I could be
Yep.
misquoting that. Someone in the
Well,
comments will say,
Downey, all the space shuttles were built with
yep,
North American Aviation in Downey and in
right.
like Lancaster area. All of the Apollo capsules were built in Downey. All the third stage stuff was built in Seal Beach. Um, the what was it? The other ones, C-17. That was the last plane. It was built here in Long Beach on the other side of the airport. That's that huge cargo transport for the
That they still
for the
use.
U.S.
It's
Air
still
Force.
in use.
It's still in use. They don't make them anymore, but occasionally one will fly around. We'll see one land every once in a while for some reason. So yeah, it was a huge hub for that, and it made sense for us to be here. And we're our CEO announced the road to 400,000. So our goal is to sell 400,000 vehicles next year, and
Wow.
we're going to need every square foot of this place to push out that many cars. It's a lot of cars.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Wow.
The other The other fun fact is what is it? Just half the building that is a U.S. port that you have to if you drive in the wrong
Yeah.
side of it, they will stop you promptly because you're not. I mean,
Yes.
it's its own
Right.
little microcapsule inside of Long Beach Airport, where if you don't want to go in the wrong
Yeah, it's a
gate there.
little free trade zone
Yeah.
spot. So it's like you're in the US, but you're in this little la la land,
Yep.
taxationally speaking.
That Car Show is proud to partner with Drake Motorcars. Drake Motorcars is Denver's premier destination for exactly the kinds of vehicles that we like here at That Car Show. Think Velocity Broncos, Audi RS6s, Acura NSXs, and air-cooled Porsches. You can see their complete and constantly changing inventory at drakemotorcars.com and check out their amazing online reviews from all across the country. But our friends at Drake need your specialty car too. A sign of a good business is when there are more customers than inventory. So reach out to Drake too if you've got a great enthusiast car that just doesn't get driven like it used to. Find out more at drakemotorcars.com and let them know you heard about them on That Car Show.
No, well,
Oh.
Ryan, speaking of crystal balls, Ryan has a looking into the future question. So let's hit it.
Yeah, I'm just greedy maybe, but I want to know what we should be buying now, right?
Nate said not to
love
buy the
one-
C230 because of the plastic, the clips
No,
and the
no,
interior
no.
That's the
plastic
hot
is like
take.
hell. So
Well,
I talked to him in Pebble. I was telling him I was looking at a Japanese market wagon, right-hand drive wagon.
Yeah.
And they only wanted like $8,000 or $9,000 for it here in town. And he's like, "Oh, you'll never find the plastic.
Sure.
The interior pieces will fall apart." He was like, "Pass."
Well, I think, if from my spokesperson for Mercedes today it's like they're all precious babies and they're all worth saving. But we know it's not possible to just, because the sheer number of cars that we have, it's like trying to pick out the cream of the crop and the ones to buy. I think a lot of the sort of unusual and unique, we talked about the Silver Arrow Edition R129s. Those are really, quite popular, and they're still affordable classics. Like people can find those on Bring a Trailer or, Cars and Bids, whatever you can find. The early AMG cars are interesting, and they're big dollars now. But again, the support level of that, because it was a separate company up until 1993, it's difficult for us to manage that because it was, those were pre-merger days with AMG and Mercedes-Benz. So we've got a little bit of difficulty there. SLRs certainly are coming around. The price has softened on some of the like Pagodas and things like that have come down a little bit. For a while we were doing them $250,000-$350,000 for a Pagoda, full restoration, everything.
Wow.
But you can actually buy quite a bit of those things now relatively inexpensively. I think a 560 SL for somebody just starting out in this world and wants to get into something interesting, a convertible. You can buy a 560 SL for, what's a medium priced sedan cost nowadays. It's a lot of car for the money, what you're getting. And with, having a hard top, soft top combo is kind of a cool way to do it. I think the ones to look at are also Black Series cars. Okay. So, we got we got the CLK Black Series was the first one we got. Europe got an SLK 55 AMG Black Series. We never got that one. That's the only one we didn't get. Right. And then you've got the C Coupe Black Series, the SL65 Black Series, which is probably my favorite of those. All the way up into the current generation stuff. So I think those are something to look for. We always say the 500E is one of the all-time favorites from a future collectible. The Evo 2 now is really huge money.
Big money.
But the 190E, the regular 2316, I owned one. Yeah. And it's probably my favorite driving car I've ever owned. It's the most stable platform. There's that race series that they did in Germany when the Nürburgring reopened. Was it 85 or 86? I forget the year that they opened it. And this little guy named Senna just blew the doors off of everybody in this little, 2516. Yeah. And so it's a great car, and it's very capable to do the work yourself and continue to work on it. Brakes and suspension and that sort of thing, it's relatively simple. So I think those are things that are really going to be interesting in the future. Sure. My latest kick is I want a vintage G. That's what I want.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah,
we all do.
So
yeah, like a Europa era. Yeah.
Did you ever finish? What
older,
did you have? You had a
older.
What were you working on? The the I'm misremembering, but the big.
Oh, so I have the weirdest vintage Mercedes in all of America right now.
Right.
So I have a 1956 Mercedes-Benz L312, which is a 4.5 ton truck.
Yeah.
It looks like a giant ponton. So it's this quite large. It was, and I have the only one that was ever delivered to the United States.
Really?
So it's a U.S. version. It's got U.S. lights and instruments, and we think it was the factory demonstrator, and they were judging whether they wanted to bring trucks to the U.S. market.
Wow.
And it was used in Orange County and L.A. its entire life. It's never left L.A. or
Really?
Orange County.
How'd you
And I
find
bought
that,
it
Nate?
from a guy in Sierra Madre, actually,
Huh.
Oh my
up in the
gosh.
foothills.
Yeah.
And it was used on a farm in Buena Park so it was the farm next to Knott's Berry Farm, what would
I was
eventually
gonna
become
say,
Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh.
yeah.
And so the guys that the family that lived there, they owned this truck, they're Lubeckman family, and they used it to haul machinery and things like that. And I even have a picture of it at the farm in like 1965 when it was, at that point it was like 10 years old. And so I'm doing a like Concours level restoration on this thing, which is
Amazing.
insane to do. But I mean, it's just everything's huge on it, and it's kind of like working on a Unimog, like that
Right.
size of vehicle. I think it's 26 feet long, and fully loaded.
Wow.
I think gross is like 30,000 pounds. It'll haul with a trailer and everything, so it's pretty big. So that's my weird project that I'm working on.
That
So Nate,
sounds
we've all seen
amazing.
that Benz Transporter, right? Full of like, is this that look? Is this the same
No, well,
sort of?
same era, and they actually
Okay.
used these on the race team in '55, obviously
Really?
for the Grand Prix and for sports car racing. And they had some of them set up as like mobile machine shops. We have a picture
Wow.
of one of these trucks that, I mean, you can stand up inside of it. It's big enough. And there's a lathe, a mill, a drill press, and a bandsaw in the back of this thing. And it's like, you can imagine like going to a Formula One race now, and we're like, oh yeah, we brought a 5-axis CNC machine that weighs 250,000 pounds. We brought it with us to, Dubai or whatever. It's, that would
Just
be
in
the
case
kind of
we
the,
need it.
right. We never know what we need. But the Ren Transporter is an interesting piece. So the original is destroyed. It's gone.
Okay,
It kind of sat out behind the race shops for a few years, and I think it just kind of rusted into the ground. It's probably went through some harsh winters in Germany, and that was the end of it. And so it was 300 SL powered, and it was built off of a 300 Adenauer chassis. And the idea was it was not really used necessarily to get to the race. The idea was, let's say you're at Reims in France, and you need to get that car back to the Stuttgart shops and get it fixed and get it back to the track overnight. How could you do that? Well, if you can do 105 miles per hour, which was what it was rated for, fully loaded, then you could get there and back pretty quick. It's not that far away at 100 miles an hour. So
That's
that was the whole
incredible.
reason they built it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Did you guys know
Yeah.
that?
I did
That's a
not.
story. That's amazing.
Learn something new every
And-
day.
Yeah.
And so the one that Jay has actually was the first one that I think we started working on to build a replica of it, because that was like one of the pieces we didn't have in our collection as a company. And so it was being built, but it didn't go the direction that they necessarily wanted to do. And so they decided to go and build it more like the original, because the one that Jay has is built on a different type of chassis. And I think it has a diesel engine, if I'm not mistaken. And so Mercedes actually built a fully functional one. And I think we have two now, if I'm not mistaken. One that sits in the museum on display, and then we have one that runs. And they actually took it up the hill at Goodwood last year. And I'm like, that's
Oh
the
my gosh.
perfect. It had a W196 on the back of it. So there's let's see, $35 million, $40 million car in the back.
Right.
So
See, this is
it's
why
pretty crazy.
Mercedes-Benz rules, right? I mean, this is
We
why
have
we love it.
fun.
35, 40 million. The only reasonable answer, blast up the hill. Come on.
That's right.
We love
Give it
it.
beans.
Well, Nate, this is amazing. Obviously, we could probably talk to you for 6 more hours with all the stories and all the different cars. So we would love to have you come back.
Yeah,
but
sure.
for now, what is next at the center? Because obviously you do have that beautiful museum area in the front too. And so what if people come to visit, like what can
Yeah,
they...
so the main workshop area is closed to the public generally, when we're working for safety reasons mainly. But what's cool is we built it in such a way that you can actually come and see and look into the windows and see what's going on at the workshop on any given day. And so we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. We're right at the Long Beach Airport on Lakewood Boulevard, 3860 North Lakewood Boulevard in Long Beach. And you're more than welcome to come by. We have a series of cars on display. We've got a PC23, the Indy car, the Beast. We have the very first Beast is here. We have that car. Right now we have the Jurassic Park M-Class from the second Jurassic Park movie. It has a little inflatable dinosaur inside that we've nicknamed Mini Mike. And so
Was that a
see
leftover from a camera car, or what was it?
So it's actually the 5th prototype ML ever built. So it was built in like
that Mercedes
1995.
supplied for the production.
Right, because that was
this
all
was
timed
built,
just so, yeah.
Yeah, this one was actually built in Graz, I believe, in Austria at the G-Class production shops, and then they moved it to the United States when they
So
started.
this thing could be hand built.
It is. It's the most bizarre prototype you've ever seen. But what they needed camera cars for the movie,
Right?
and so this was one of the stars of the movie. Is this
It was
actual
a hero
car? And so it has holes in the side of it where they would put like camera rigs. And it had no glass when we got it. Like it was just a piece of plexiglass that was like screwed in with like wood screws. And so we're debating getting it running, but I don't think it has run in 25 years. So
Really?
it's time to try to get that going again. We've got some enthusiasts in the club that offered to come and help us get it up and running on their own time. So we maybe take them up on that offer. But and then we have cars for sale, so people can come and see. We've got like an R129 for sale on the floor, all the way up to fully restored 300 SLs. We have a 180 diesel Ponton. That's top speed, I believe, is like 56 miles per hour. So if you want to roll coal and roll slow, you can go ahead and drive a 1958 180 diesel.
You got a kid getting their driver's license. This is the car for them, right?
This is this
Parents,
is
are you listening?
this is the car for your teenage kid, because they're not going fast. I think 0 to 60 0 to 60 is unobtainable basically, but I think 0 to top speed is 39 or 45 seconds.
Wow.
Perfect.
So, that's
good
the
golf
ultimate
cart.
vehicle.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So come by and see us, and then our parts department's open as well. Locally here, we stock a lot of stuff. So if you're working on your project locally and you're like all of a sudden you need a part or something like that, we keep a lot of stuff in stock, and so we're here to help with anything that you might need.
Well, and take it from Jay Leno. You guys can find anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Everything's
and
available.
Everything.
available.
Including Otto. Did we mention
I was
Otto?
going to say.
We got to talk
it
about
would
Otto
be-
real quick before we leave.
He's
We would be
asleep,
remiss.
but let's see if we can get him up. Come on, buddy.
We need to talk about the real star of the show, Otto the Long Boy.
So this is Otto.
There he is. Oh,
We had to
look at
interview
those
Nate to
locks.
get to Otto.
If you come by, I just woke him up from his 19th hour of sleeping straight, and so he's here every day. He's our shop dog. So if he's not asleep, he'll be out hanging out with the cars, and so you might come say hi to him. And you can follow him on Instagram at Otto the Long Boy, OTTO the Long Boy. And I post some pictures of him with the 300 SLs and driving around and having a good time. So he's kind of our little mascot around here. So
He is
He's
definitely the cutest shop dog. And is he a mini long-haired dachshund?
yep, he's a mini long-haired shaded cream. So he's kind of blondie dachshund. So and very sleepy at the moment.
He's just the sweetest, and he has
Had
the
a hard day at the
funniest
office.
personality.
He's
Yeah,
ready to
that's
go home. Let's get you
Another
guys
hard
home.
day at Mercedes. But yeah, it was actually through Tyler actually for when we shot the video. He just popped into the frame. He just came in and wanted to be in the show, and
That's
he ended up sitting in the back of the gull wing while we drove around. And then we said, well, why don't we take him with us to Park City and do the rally with him? So he came with us. And so if you
that's
see his
amazing.
Instagram, there's pictures of him on the rally and hanging out with April and Tyler and Mike and Michael Abla from our team in Germany, and they rode around with him, and he just had a good time. So, and
That's
so
amazing.
Well,
come by,
he's-
say hi to Otto, and
He's the best. I will never forget walking in and seeing him sleeping up on top of the shop counter, just going, wait a minute, what's going on?
yeah,
He's so
he-
cute.
there's no corner of this place that he hasn't slept on, under. Funny enough, if you take a hard top like off of a pagoda and you put it on the floor, he likes to crawl underneath it and hide inside the hardtop. So I don't know. It's dachshund stuff. As you know, Lindsay, with dachshunds,
I know, right?
they burrow on everything. So
They do. They are born burrowers, and they just have the funniest person. I mean, so much personality in these little tiny bodies.
yes, yes.
They're very
But
fun.
no one loves riding in cars more than this dog. I can promise you that. So he loves being around cars and in cars and everything. So
Well,
Just
he's
like his
in the
owner.
right spot.
Just like Dad.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
show up
Just
for
like
Nate,
me.
but you stay for Otto.
that's right.
Well, Otto's in the right spot, and he's aptly named, and
Yep.
truly the star of the show, and very fun to
Absolutely.
follow him on Instagram.
Yep.
Thank you
so
very much.
Nate,
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
this was super fun. Tell us where we can find the Classic Center on Instagram, so if people want to follow along.
So we're at MB Classic Center, and you can also probably most of the stuff that you'll see revolving around our world is at Mercedes-Benz Museum is another one that I would follow, because they'll show you what's going on all over the world. So like right now they're doing the Miele in Dubai. And so Mercedes-Benz is there. We've got the W196 there. And so you can see some videos and stuff from that. So yeah, follow us on there and our adventures with old classic Mercedes.
It's
Awesome.
definitely a good follow and worth a visit to the center.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us. This was really fun, and hope to see you
Absolutely.
in real life before too long.
Yes. And you're
And
more than welcome. If you guys all want to come to Los Angeles, we'll shoot an episode here.
Oh, let's
and
do it.
You guys
Done and
can have it
done.
on location.
We're
You guys
in.
did LA Auto Show, so next time we're doing it up here. So
Even
That's
better.
our next
Would
live
love
show.
that.
You heard it.
Love
Thank you.
that. Yeah.
heard it here
Thanks
first.
so much.
Well, for
You're
all of
welcome.
us at that car show, and of course, our dear friend Nate, thank you so much for joining us. Remember, always be driving, and we'll see you next week.
see you later.